The Kumbh Mela is officially underway in Prayagraj. I'm sure you've seen the headlines, the largest gathering of humanity, 600 million people to attend, and the first Mahakumbh in 144 years. It is a high-tech festival this time. You've got underwater drones, AI cameras and aerial surveillance. But decades ago, the Kumbh was very different. At one point, it was a revenue source for the British, a hub of nationalism, and a base for revolution. Tonight, we're telling you that story. Let's go back to the 1800s. That's when the British East India Company took control of Prayagraj. In the middle of that century, they began noticing something about this city, a fair or mela every 12 years. Of course, the British did not care about the religious significance. They cared about the business opportunity, about making money. Every devotee at the Kumbh had to pay taxes to the company. How much? 1 rupee per person. That was the tax, the Kumbh tax, 1 rupee per person. You had to pay that tax to take a holy dip. I know that sounds like a lot right now, but remember, this is the 1800s. The average Indian salary was not even in double digits. A tailor would make around 8 rupees per month. A waiter or a sweeper would make around 4 rupees. Yet the Kumbh tax was 1 rupee. Why? Good old British exploitation. And all of this was documented by a British woman. Her name was Fanny Park. She lived in India for nearly 24 years, mostly around the city of Prayagraj. And she has mentioned all of this in her memoir, how ordinary pilgrims were taxed by the company. Tax was also collected from businesses at the Kumbh, especially barbers. You see, most devotees would shave their heads in Prayagraj, so barbers had a booming business. In 1870, the British set up 3,000 barber enclosures. They collected around 42,000 rupees from that Kumbh. Nearly 1/4 of it came from taxes on barbers. Every barber had to pay 4 rupees. Same story. In the 1882 Kumbh, the British collected nearly 50,000 rupees. Almost 10,000 of that came from barbers. It tells you how the British saw the Kumbh. They were initially frightened by the size of the gathering, by the political and religious patronage. But gradually, they started profiting from it. And this hurt the local community. Prayagraj is home to the Prayagwal Brahmins. They would guide and help pilgrims who came for the Kumbh. They would also get paid for it. But the Kumbh tax cut into their revenue. Plus, they were unhappy with Christian missionaries. Many of them would camp in Prayagraj. They would try to convert the thousands of Hindu pilgrims who came for the Kumbh. So naturally, the locals were unhappy. All this resentment was building throughout the 1800s. It exploded in 1857 during the First War of Independence. The First War of Indian Independence. The Prayagwal supported this revolution. They couldn't fight themselves, but they aided the revolutionaries, like Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi. She stayed with the Prayagwals as the battle plans were charted. Thus began the Kumbh's link to Indian nationalism. It continued in the 20th century as well. Mahatma Gandhi attended the Kumbh Mela in 1918. He also took a dip in the Ganga. The British were clearly worried about this visit because they tracked him through intelligence reports. Another example is the 1942 Kumbh. It was happening during the Second World War, so the British restricted pilgrimage. Apparently, they were concerned about a Japanese attack. But some historians do not buy this version. They point to another possible reason, the Quit India movement. It was gaining traction around the same time, so historians say maybe the British wanted to avoid such a big gathering. It is among the many stories linked to the Kumbh, stories that cover India's history. In many ways, it is also a reflection of it. Taxed by the East India Company, exploited by the British Raj, celebrated by nationalists, and now the symbol of a new India, a country that blends customs with progress, rituals with technology, and religion with tourism.